Thank you. I'm going to speak today about the synergistic relationship between and among parents and children. It's obvious, we all know that parents teach children. That's our job, is to teach children. Our job is really to put ourselves out of a job by creating independent children. But there's also a critical piece of what children teach parents. First, I want to talk about what parents teach children. Honesty, right? How often do children hear, as they should, that honesty is the best policy? It certainly is. We teach that, we try to learn it, we teach that nothing else matters. If you make a mistake, own the mistake, be honest about it, and move on. We try to raise responsible children who will eventually become independent, so we literally put ourselves out of a job. The responsibility starts early, right? We try to teach our children when they're young to zip up their own jacket and be independent that way. As they get older, we try to have them take responsibility for going to teachers for extra help. If we're successful, those little successes early with our children then lead to larger success, which builds confidence. The more confidence children have, the more they're going to take responsibility and be independent. We try to teach empathy and compassion. We all know the term IQ, which is kind of book smart and school smarts. But EQ, which is emotional quotient, actually has been shown to lead to more success in life, in careers, in job satisfaction than IQ. And EQ is your ability to be empathetic, to read other people, to anticipate reaction. So we teach empathy and compassion to our children if we're successful as thoughtful parents. An attitude of gratitude is important. We were in another school where there was a whole emphasis on kind of catching people doing things right. There was a group of middle schoolers who had little Mr. Potato Heads. And they were real potatoes, but they would fit them with the little potato head ears and mouth and everything. And if they caught you doing a random act of kindness, they would express their gratitude. And in some moment where there were a lot of people around, you'd get handed a Mr. Potato Head. It became this very big thing in a school. What it really did was make everybody appreciative. And we do want to be appreciative of little things. We want to be appreciative of large things, but we also want to take joy. So attitude of gratitude we try to teach as parents. Generosity as well, right? We want to teach children that we're all fortunate in so many ways, and we can do things for those who aren't as fortunate. Listening to Muhammad talk about his life experience, his family's experience, made me a little less concerned about the hangnail I woke up with this morning that was taking over my life. So the generosity is something important. Forgiveness, right? Forgiveness. We want to teach children that people do make mistakes. People will harm us deliberately or inadvertently, but to hold on to a grudge or anger embitters us and does nothing to heal the relationship. So we teach children to forgive. We want to teach children to persevere and to be resilient, right? There's a great book from when we were raising our own children, and it was called Blessing of a Skinned Knee. And if you get the title, you probably don't even need to read the whole book. But it was about how we don't protect our children by protecting our children. We protect our children by teaching them that they will fall, they'll stumble, they'll literally and figuratively skin their knee. And they'll pick themselves up and they'll learn that their future is in their hands, their destiny is in their hands. We want to teach our children humility, right? We want them to be modest. Nobody likes somebody who brags a lot. Nobody likes someone who shows off or is a sore winner. So we teach our children humility. And we teach our children love. In our family, when the kids were younger and didn't have much money, they're just out of college, they still don't have much money. But we do coupon books. We still do coupon books. And coupon books would be for your birthday or for Christmas. As a parent, you might get a book and it would be, I'll clean my room without being asked, I'll make you coffee in bed, I'll make dinner, I'll cut the lawn. And these are very valuable. The one I still cherish because it has no expiration date is my daughter gave me one, Endless Snuggles. right? So whenever I want to snuggle, I whip out my coupon. It's laminated, so it will never wear out. Anyway, we want our children to learn all these qualities, and as we've been raising our own children, and as the headmaster at Country School, I watch other parents raise their children, it seems to me somewhere in that list is what we're all trying to accomplish. In preparing for the TED Talk, I've talked very little about kind of my parents, only because I don't know why I don't talk much about my parents. But my parents are both extraordinary people. They've both left the earth, although they're very much in my mind and in the minds of my two brothers and sister. The TED Talk about this synergistic relationship between parents and children got me thinking about my parents. And I actually have terrific memories and stories from both parents. But there was a rare time of about 4 or 5 years after my parents were divorced, and I was actually living with my father while I was going through high school. My mother had gone back to Ohio and taken my younger brother and sister, and my older brother was in college already. So I had this time with my father, and in 1977, I was a sophomore in high school, and he wrote a book called The Complete Book of Running that absolutely exploded. It was very much the right book at the right time. And I got to live that experience with him. We would run together, we'd travel to his speeches together, we'd go to road races together. He had me working on research with him. We'd write our books together. He had a running calendar that we'd produced together. So we had a synergistic relationship. And it's interesting, it was only as I had my own children that I realized, and I couldn't go to all his speeches because I was in high school having to pursue my studies. But I went to a lot of them. And it was only when I had my own children and I was serving as admissions director in a boarding school traveling all over that I realized how much nicer it must have been for my father to have me or one of my siblings out on the trips with him, because he'd be bringing part of home, me, out on the road with them. But you get that experience, the adults in the audience will know, you get that experience when you start having your own children of what it must have been like. For those who don't know, in 1977 when The Complete Book of Running came out, people were starting to take more responsibility for their own lives. Before that, you'd kind of beat your body up with alcohol or cigarettes or something, and then when it broke down, you'd drop it on the doctor's doorstep, and the doctor would fix you up. And what was going on, starting with kind of Jack LaLanne, is people were beginning to take more responsibility for their own health, stress management, diet, that sort of thing. And my father happened to write this book at exactly the right time. He had written other books, puzzle books, modestly successful books, but then had the idea of a book on running. And again, in 1977, it exploded, and to this day, it's still Random House's best-selling nonfiction book ever, and it sold over 1 million copies throughout the world. And he traveled to give speeches to Australia, to New Zealand, to England, France, all over it. And at one point, I had a list of all the states of the United States that he visited. It's an extraordinary number, and I got to go to many of those with him. So I could talk about mother, I could talk about my father, but I wanted to talk about my father in this very extraordinary time. In 1978, the book was doing so well that my father was listed in People magazine as one of the most intriguing people of 1978. Now, pretty impressive. President Jimmy Carter and Brooke Shields, right? But he was also there with Miss Piggy. So. His father, my grandfather, had left state of Washington, never went to college, had a high school education, but was an extraordinary reader, and had taken a bus ride out to make his way in New York City, because that's what you're doing if you're a writer. This was during the Depression, and my grandfather actually ended up editing Time magazine, again with no college education. But I tell you that, so I can show you this. Ben Ballard, if you didn't laugh, it wasn't going to be worth it. My grandfather, while he was trying to get a name in writing circles, added the second X to the name. Because he said, became an editor, because he said a person ought to be a noun, not a verb. So, our daughter Em's in the audience. Actually, I have many relatives who are verbs. And we don't have big family reunions, but if we did, we'd divide into the verbs You divide into the nouns. So anyway, my father came by his writing naturally, but it was very, very hard work. The book was so successful that people came out of the woodwork to try to get my father to sponsor their products, to be a spokesperson, hoping to increase sales. One guy named Roy Fields reached out pretty early after the success of the book and was marketing something called bee pollen, which exists today, but it was known then as the forgotten wonder food. And Roy Fields called up my father and was pitching him on bee pollen as a stimulant that makes you can train harder, you get strong, you get more muscular, you breathe easier, and you run faster. And my father said, it's really not my thing. And Roy Fields said, no problem at all, I'll send you 500 tablets. So he sent the 500 tablets. And we got the bee pollen, and my father and I started taking them as an experiment. The complete book of running actually ended up ending someone's career, which is quite sad, but a little funny. My father had these 3 puzzle books that, again, done modestly well. And when he had the idea for a running book, because it seemed like running was really taking off, he went to Doubleday, who had published the 3 books, and proposed this. And what my father was trying to do was get enough of an advance on his book so that he could take a whole year off of commuting from Greenwich into Manhattan, an hour each way, and stay at home and just write. And what proposed this to Doubleday, and Doubleday turned him down. So he got an agent and shopped it around, and Random House picked it up. But when Doubleday turned it down, the poor guy who turned it down ended up losing his job, because when the book exploded, Doubleday realized what they had missed out on. But when they turned it down, they not only turned it down, they said, nobody wants to read a book on running. It's like reading a book about breathing. Everyone knows how to do it already. So it's famous, we have that letter. Someone else from the same place, and not only is it like reading a book on how to breathe, it's like reading a book on how to fall down. Everyone knows how to do it. And at one point, someone approached my father about seeing the success of running. How about writing a book on jump rope? And my father thought about it for a while, and he didn't think he could possibly come up with like 250 pages on jumping rope. But maybe someone will someday. Maybe someone in the audience will write a book about it. One of the things that happened in 1979 is People magazine came out to our house, and they wanted to cover this author that had written this blockbuster book. So they came with 2 writers, a camera crew set up, and they're interviewing all day. They're interviewing my father all day, and they're taking photos of the house and where he did his writing and all that. It was a long day. My younger brother, he maybe was 16, I was 18. My younger brother comes walking through the house at one point on his way to the refrigerator, where he spent a lot of his time. And one of the writers said to Steve, "Would you like to run?" And Steve said, "No, jogging's boring." And like the interview stopped because People magazine knew they had like their title. And sure enough, it became the major title under the lead of the thing, "Jogging is boring." That's funny in our family. At one point, by the way, Breakwater Books is up here as my reminder, but it's also up here because my wife bought Breakwater Books, and I wanted to put it up here to promote her bookstore. But this is also my reminder because at one point, New York Times had said that Jim Fixx's Complete Book of Running is running off the shelves so fast you can even watch it. The books get sold as quickly as they get restocked. So we had to be in New York for some event, and we went over to the Barnes & Noble on 5th Avenue and surreptitiously stood back to kind of watch. There's a whole stack of Complete Book of Runnings, and we didn't want to be too obvious in case someone recognized that. So we stood there and watched. We were there for about 45 minutes. One guy came by, picked up the book, put it down, and walked away. They were not flying off the shelves. But anyway. And then at one point, we were down for the 1978 Mardi Gras Marathon. And it's an extraordinary race for 2 reasons. One is that year there was a police strike, and the marathon is a terrific 26-mile run, and it goes through the French Quarter, and you see all of New Orleans. Well, this year, there happened to be a police strike, so they couldn't run and close off all the streets. So instead, the marathon was 26 miles across the Lake Pontchartrain Causeway. And if you've ever driven the Lake Pontchartrain Causeway, and I've now run the Lake Pontchartrain Causeway, it's 26 miles straight across on concrete. And you can run on concrete, you can walk on concrete, but you don't want to run 26 miles straight across. We're at about mile 20 in the marathon, and my father had gone down and given a speech the night before, and spaghetti supper and all that, so people knew what he looked like. And we're going by a 20-mile mark, and we're passing a guy in obviously horrible discomfort, and I assume he finished the race, but he was not looking good. But he looks up and he recognizes my father, and he says, "Fixx, I wouldn't be out here if it weren't for that silly-ass book of yours." Excuse me for that. One of the really great things that happened is my father and I, when I was in high school, we wore the same size shoe, 10.5. And shoe companies were throwing everything they could at my father. He didn't take sponsorship from a clothing company or shoe company because what he wanted to do was remain impartial. So he didn't take money, but he sure took equipment so he could try it and see what he liked. So it was only recently that I actually ran out of my whole supply of shoes. We had so many, they lasted like 30 years. I had Adidas cross-country skis, I had all the Adidas clothing. I look back now, I probably look like a bit of an idiot walking around with all the Adidas stuff. One of the companies that, the sponsor was a cigarette company. Marlboro Cigarettes came offering a whole lot of money, and obviously my father was not comfortable being a spokesperson for cigarettes. Foot bath company wanted him to sponsor arch supports, treadmills, jewelry, stopwatches. This extraordinary group of people who came out, and I was living that with him, and it was fun to have these conversations. He treated me as an adult as we decided kind of what to pursue and what not to pursue, what to try out, what to experiment with. One of the companies that came forward was a toilet paper company. Why is that so funny? Why do I put toilet paper up and Lucy laughs? Right? One of the companies that came forward was a toilet paper company, and it's a novelty company. They actually offered my father a lot of money to excerpt copies of the running book on toilet paper, but he turned it down because he said there was something about the symbolism that bothered him. And for the students who don't get that, what bothered him was the idea that his words would then be flushed down a toilet. But we kind of wish we had. It would be kind of fun to have it on paper, but we never did. But it was a really extraordinary time. I told stories about my father during that time. I could have told stories about my mother during that time. But the TEDx talks really got me thinking about what do we try to teach our children, and what do you deliberately teach your children? What do your children notice about you? But there's another side to it, and that is what do our children teach us? And if we're good, receptive, thoughtful parents, we're going to be paying attention to the other side of this synergy relationship and what can we learn from our children. So I have a few items to offer. One is every day is a fresh start. If you see children at the end of a school day, they're totally liberated, totally liberated. You see them in June, it's like an endless summer coming up. And what I'm challenging the students in the audience to do is help your parents remember that every day is a new day and a fresh day and a day to tackle something new and not carry too much forward that maybe didn't go well the day before. I was watching the students at the paint table, the drawing table. They're so imaginative, right? Students love to paint. They love to build sandcastles. They're totally immersed in that, and time will just fly by. When was the last time, students in the audience, that your parents did art if they aren't artists, or they drew, right? Or they built a sandcastle? I asked the students to help their parents remember that creative pursuits are fun and they're good for you. Kids dance, they sing, they're totally liberated because life hasn't beaten them down, right? What can we as adults learn about being courageous and trying new things and singing and dancing from our children? I challenge the adults to think about that. Think about that. Be courageous. Dr. Samuel Johnson, great English writer, is quoted as saying, "How much happiness is gained and how much misery escaped by frequent and violent agitation of the body," right? By frequent and violent agitation of the body. Kids are naturally active. They run, they play, the recess is the best time of day for them. And they move around, and it's not exercise to them. It's just fun, and it's exploration. What I challenge the children in the audience to do is invite your parents to climb a tree with you. Invite them to swing on the swings with you, right? Have them take a walk in the woods with you, but get your parents active. kids make friends so easily, right? They make friends at a soccer team, they make friends at the beach, they'll talk about their new friend that they've played with that they really didn't know before, they may never see again, but that's their new friend. It's really terrific. What I'd say to the children is introduce your parents to your friends' parents, right? You know, stretch parents to understand it. Parents, sometimes what we want to do is have individual relationships, not group relationships, but that takes a little effort to go one-on-one. In many of these items, or all these items, I'd say, our children aren't teaching this to us new. What they're really doing is relearning this for us, right? Because we all knew this growing up about friendships and adventures. So, relearning. Kids, they break a leg, right? They know everyone in their class is going to sign their cast. They have a scar, they want to show you their scar, because it's not a scar of defeat, it's a scar of survival, right? We as adults aren't necessarily so good at thinking of scars as survival. We worry about making ourselves vulnerable. We worry about someone pitying us or thinking we're weak. Kids can teach us that it's okay to show your scars. And I challenge the children to say to their parents, you know, whatever you do, I'm still proud of you, Mom. I'm still proud of you, Dad. We always hear that, right? Turn that around to your parents. Ask them what they're afraid of, if they're afraid of anything. Or ask them what they worry about. Let your parents show you their scars, or make them show you their scars. Trying new things. Our family had a tradition, I think of it all the time at Chatfield Hollow, in Killingworth, and Surf Club here in Madison. And we go on adventure walks. And adventure walks are just what it sounds like. We don't know what we're going to find. We don't know what we're going to see. But we just go out and we walk. And the kids decide where we're going to go. And we look at things. We try to notice things. But we go out deliberately to try new things and to have adventures. Children do that. They'll ski down a slope. They'll meet new friends. They'll try a sport. We don't always do that as well as adults. But I think as we watch our children, we can do it. And our children can help us do it. Noticing the little things. When our daughter was younger, she could spot birds' nests in any tree. Far away, up close. She was fascinated with birds' nests. My wife and I thought that maybe in a previous life she had been a bird. And also, this one's a little gross. And again, Em's in the audience. But when she was younger, we'd be driving down the highway and she was fascinated with roadkill. What was that? Was that raccoon? Was that fox? What was that? And she'd crane her neck to try to see what that was. We'd have to slow down. Our son, we spent a lot of time here in Madison when he was growing up. Our son was fascinated by the sandpipers on the beach and how fast their legs are, right? Just staying away from the water. They notice those little things. Adults, we're getting back to it because we're learning mindfulness. We're learning to grab a moment and be tranquil, kind of, and at peace. But our children do it, and we knew it. We just need to relearn it. So the synergy in the parent-child relationship is important. D.H. Lawrence, the great writer, would talk about the rainbow. And he said when two people come together, they create something better than either of them could create on their own, a relationship, right? And he likened it to a rainbow. In fact, one of his novels is The Rainbow. But this theme ran through much of his writing. The idea that two people can come together and create something bigger than either could create on their own. And our children do that to us. We certainly do it deliberately with our children, but our children do it to us if we're open to it. Two more things that children can help remind their parents of. And I'll close with this. One is that it's okay to have pancakes for dinner, right? And two, there's always time for ice cream. Thank you so much.